There's a truck parked outside a modest 3-bedroom house in Lubbock, Texas. It costs $82,000. That's more than most people in that neighborhood make in an entire year. The man who owns it makes $54,000 a year before tax. On paper, that math simply does not work. He should not be able to afford this truck. He shouldn't even be close. And yet, every single morning, he starts that engine, backs out of that driveway, and drives it to work like it's the most normal thing in the world. Nobody stops him. No alarm goes off. The bank keeps approving the payment. So either the math is broken or something else, something quieter, something almost invisible is holding this whole thing together. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what that something is. And I promise you, once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Not just in Texas, not just with trucks, but in your own life too. Let's zoom out for a second, because this isn't really a story about one truck. This is a story about an entire state, and honestly, an entire culture built around a number that stopped making sense a long time ago. Texas has more pickup trucks registered per household than almost anywhere else in the country. Ford's F-Series alone outsells every single car model in the state year after year, without exception. Walk through any parking lot in Midland, Amarillo, or Lubbock, and trucks aren't the exception, they're the default. But here's the number that should stop you in your tracks. The average household income in Texas sits somewhere around $70,000 a year. Meanwhile, a fully loaded F-250, a Ram 3500, or a Chevy Silverado HD with a right trim package can list for $75,000, $80,000, sometimes $90,000 before tax, title, registration, and interest are even added on top. A single vehicle sitting in a driveway, depreciating the moment it rolls off the lot, can cost more than an entire year of a family's income. And somehow, this has become completely normal. Nobody blinks. Nobody questions it out loud. So today, we're going to ask the question nobody at the dealership wants you asking. How is this actually happening? And more importantly, is it happening to you too, just wearing a different disguise? Because whether you're watching this from Texas, from Manchester, from Brisbane, or from Auckland, this exact same pattern is playing out around you right now, just dressed up in a different shape. Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's a house that's slightly too big. Maybe it's a credit card balance you've stopped checking. This video is about learning to see that pattern clearly for what feels like the first time. Let's call him Cody. 34 years old, works in oilfield logistics just outside Midland, Texas, coordinating equipment transport for drilling sites. A solid, respectable job that pays $58,000 a year. Not rich, not struggling either, just normal. The kind of income that describes most working people in that part of the state. 3 years ago, Cody's old truck, a 2014 Silverado with almost 200,000 miles on it, finally started falling apart. Transmission problems, then the air conditioning died in the middle of a 105-degree Texas summer. He needed something reliable. He walked into the dealership with a plan. Spend around $35,000 on a solid used truck, keep the payment manageable, move on with his life. That is not what happened. He left 3 hours later with the keys to a brand new $81,000 Ram TRX, a truck with more horsepower than most sports cars, a truck he never actually needed for his job, a truck that, if we're being completely honest, he probably couldn't fully explain buying if you asked him today. So how does someone walk in planning to spend $35,000 and walk out having committed to $81,000? It wasn't cash, it wasn't a sudden raise. It happened through the exact same mechanism that almost every truck buyer in Texas uses without a second thought. An 84-month loan stretched out over 7 full years. His old truck traded in for far less than what he still owed on it. That leftover negative equity quietly rolled into the new loan, and a final monthly payment that, on the surface, looked almost reasonable. $740 a month. That's the number the finance manager wrote down on a little sheet of paper and slid across the desk. Not $81,000, just $740 a month. And in that moment, that's all Cody's brain actually processed. Not the total, just the monthly number. That's the trick. That's always the trick. Cody isn't rich. Cody is financed. And there is an enormous difference between those two words, a difference most people never fully understand until they're already several years deep inside it with no easy way back out. Before we go any further, let's slow all the way down because this video isn't just about trucks. It's about how money actually works. Explain the way it honestly should have been explained to every single one of us back in school and never was. When you buy something using a loan, you are not paying the sticker price. You are paying the sticker price plus interest, stretched out across years. And interest is not a small, forgettable detail. It is very often the single most expensive part of the entire purchase. Take Cody's truck. $81,000 financed over 84 months, 7 years, at roughly 9% interest. That truck does not actually cost $81,000. By the time that loan is fully paid off, Cody will have handed the bank closer to $108,000. That's an extra $27,000 to $28,000, completely gone, vanished, purely for the privilege of driving the truck home today instead of waiting and saving for it. And here's the part that should genuinely bother you. This didn't used to be normal. 20 years ago, a typical car loan lasted 3 to 5 years. Lenders considered anything longer too risky. But somewhere along the way, as vehicle prices climbed faster than wages ever could, dealerships and lenders found a workaround. Instead of making the vehicles cheaper, they simply made the loans longer. 84-month loans didn't exist at scale 20 years ago. They were essentially invented specifically to make unaffordable vehicles feel affordable, one small monthly number at a time. This is the first basic rule of personal finance that almost nobody says out loud. The longer the loan term, the smaller the monthly payment looks, and the bigger the illusion of affordability becomes. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. It is quite literally the entire business model. Here's what's genuinely fascinating about all of this. Cody isn't foolish. He's not bad with money because he's stupid. He's bad with money in this one moment because he's human, and humans are wired to feel first and calculate a very distant second. Psychologists call this identity spending. In truck culture states like Texas, a truck isn't just transportation. It's status. It's a visible marker of masculinity, capability, and belonging to a very specific community. Buying the biggest, most capable, most aggressive-looking truck on the lot isn't really a financial decision at all. It's an emotional one, wearing a financial costume. And once emotion has already made the decision, the brain becomes remarkably, almost impressively skilled at justifying it afterward. I need it for towing. It'll last me 15 years, easy. I work hard. I deserve this. Every single one of those thoughts feels completely true in the moment. And every single one of them is really just the brain quietly protecting a decision that was already made before the justification ever showed up. Here's the part that really matters, though. This isn't unique to Texas, and it isn't unique to trucks. In the United Kingdom, it's the leased BMW or Range Rover nobody can actually afford outright, but everybody somehow drives. In Australia, it's the dual-cab ute with a jet ski hitched to the back, financed to the hilt. In New Zealand, it's the exact same story, just with a different badge on the hood and a slightly different accent explaining it away. This pattern doesn't care what country you're in. It only cares whether your income and your identity are pulling in two different directions. So wherever you're watching this from right now, ask yourself honestly, without flinching away from the answer, is there something in your life right now, today, that you're paying for with your identity instead of your income? Because that question, uncomfortable as it is really the entire point of this video. Here's the part of Cody's story that never makes it onto Instagram, never gets a single caption, never gets shown off to anyone. That $740 monthly truck payment means Cody hasn't been able to save a meaningful down payment on a house in 3 years. It means his retirement account, the one his employer even matches contributions for, has barely grown at all because there's simply nothing left over each month to put into it. It means that if Cody lost his job tomorrow, genuinely tomorrow, he would have less than 1 full month of expenses saved before serious financial trouble started knocking. Financial advisors have a simple, well-established guideline that almost nobody follows anymore. Your total vehicle costs, the loan payment plus insurance plus fuel, should never exceed 10 to 15% of your take-home pay. Cody is sitting at roughly 22%. And here's the uncomfortable truth, he is nowhere close to a loan. Auto loan debt in America has quietly grown into one of the largest categories of consumer debt in the entire country, sitting right behind mortgages and student loans, and trucks specifically are driving a disproportionate share of that growth, purely because they have become that expensive that fast. This is the invisible cost of the truck sitting in the driveway. It isn't really the $81,000 on the price tag, it's the house that gets delayed by 5 extra years. It's the retirement that quietly starts a decade later than it should have. It's the emergency fund that never gets the chance to exist in the first place because there was never anything left over to put into it. That is the real price, and it never, ever shows up anywhere on the loan paperwork Cody signed that day.
So does any of this mean nobody in Texas should ever own a nice truck? No, not at all. This isn't about shame, and it's definitely not about telling you what you can or can't buy. This is about awareness, plain and simple. Because the people who genuinely can afford these trucks, and to be clear, some absolutely can, tend to quietly follow a small handful of rules that Cody, in that moment of the dealership, simply didn't. They buy trucks that cost less than half their annual income, not more than an entire year's worth of it. They finance for no longer than 4 to 5 years, never 7 or 8. They put down at least 20% upfront in cash, instead of rolling old negative equity into a brand new loan. And most importantly, the one rule that matters more than all the others combined, they buy the truck after they've already built a real emergency fund, not instead of one. None of these rules are complicated. None of them are secret knowledge locked away for wealthy people only. They're simply rules that dealerships have absolutely zero financial incentive to ever explain to you, because the entire modern auto financing business model depends, quite literally, on you never learning them.
Cody's story isn't really about trucks, and if you've made it this far, you probably already know that. It's about the gap between what we can technically finance and what we can actually honestly afford. That gap exists everywhere, in Texas driveways, in London car parks, in Sydney garages, in Auckland driveways, and the only real way to close it is to understand the numbers clearly, before the dealership, the bank, or the finance manager does the explaining for you on their terms. If this video genuinely taught you something today, if even one part of it made you think a little differently about a decision in your own life, that's exactly what this channel is going to keep doing, video after video, breaking down real money decisions in plain, honest language wrapped around real stories, so you never have to feel confused, embarrassed, or lost when it comes to your own finances again. Subscribe if you want to keep learning this alongside me, because the next video is going to tackle something almost everyone gets completely wrong about their very first paycheck, and I promise it's going to change the way you look at your own bank account. See you there!